Chapter 19 of The Money Moon. This recording is in the public domain. The Money Moon, a Romance, by Geoffrey Farnell. Chapter 19, in which Porges Big and Porges Small discuss the subject of matrimony. What is it, my Porges?
Well, I'm a bit worried, you know.
Worried?
Yes, afraid I shall be an old man before my time, Uncle Porges. Adam says it's worry that ages a man, and it killed a cat, too.
And why do you worry?
Oh, it's my Auntie Anthea, a course. She was crying again last night.
Crying? Bellew had been lying flat upon his back in the fragrant shadow of the hayrick, but now he sat up, very suddenly, so suddenly that Small Porges started. "Crying?" he repeated, "last night? Are you sure?"
"Oh yes, you see, she forgot to come and tuck me up last night, so I creeped downstairs, very quietly, you know, to see why, and I found her bending over the table, all sobbing, and crying. At first she tried to pretend that she wasn't, but I saw the tears quite plain. Her cheeks were all wet, you know, and when I put my arms round her, to comfort her a bit, and asked her what was the matter, she only kissed me a lot, and said, 'Nothing, nothing, only a headache.'"
"And why was she crying, do you suppose, my Porges?"
"Oh, money, a course," he sighed.
"What makes you think it was money?"
"'Cause she'd been talking to Adam. I heard him say 'good night' as I creeped down the stairs."
"Ah!" said Bellew, staring straight before him. His beloved pipe had slipped from his fingers, and, for a wonder, lay all neglected. "It was after she had talked with Adam, was it, my Porges?"
"Yes, that's why I knew it was 'bout money. Adam's always talking 'bout mortgages, and bills, and money. Oh, Uncle Porges, how I do hate money!"
"It is sometimes a confounded nuisance," nodded Bellew.
"But I do wish we had some, so we could pay all her bills, and mortgages for her. She'd be so happy, you know, and go about singing like she used to. And I shouldn't worry myself into an old man before my time, all wrinkled and gray, you know, and all would be revelry and joy if only she had enough gold and bank notes."
"And she was crying, you say?" demanded Bellew again, his gaze still far away.
"Yes."
"You are quite sure you saw the tears, my Porges?"
"Oh yes, and there was one on her nose, too, a big one that shone awful bright, twinkled, you know."
"And she said it was only a headache, did she?"
"Yes, but that meant money. Money always makes her headache, lately. Oh, Uncle Porges, I suppose people do find fortunes sometimes, don't they?"
"Why yes, to be sure they do."
"Then I wish I knew where they looked for them," said he with a very big sigh indeed. "I've hunted and hunted in all the attics, and the cupboards, and under hedges, and in ditches, and prayed, you know, every night."
"Then, of course, you'll be answered, my Porges."
"Do you really s'pose I shall be answered? You see, it's such an awful long way for one small prayer to have to go, from here to heaven, and there's clouds that get in the way, and I'm afraid my prayers aren't quite big, or heavy enough, and get lost, and blown away in the wind."
"No, my Porges," said Bellew, drawing his arm about the small, disconsolate figure, "you may depend upon it that your prayers fly straight up into heaven, and that neither the clouds, nor the wind can come between, or blow them away. So just keep on praying, old chap, and when the time is ripe, they'll be answered, never fear."
"Answered? Do you mean Oh, Uncle Porges, do you mean the Money Moon?"
The small hand upon Bellew's arm quivered, and his voice trembled with eagerness. "Why yes, to be sure, the Money Moon, my Porges, it's bound to come, one of these fine nights."
"Ah, but when, oh, when will the Money Moon ever come?"
"Well, I can't be quite sure, but I rather fancy, from the look of things, my Porges, that it will be pretty soon."
"Oh, I do hope so, for her sake, and my sake. You see, she may go getting herself married to Mr. Cassilis, if something doesn't happen soon, and I shouldn't like that, you know."
"Neither should I, my Porges, but what makes you think so?"
"Why, he's always bothering her, and asking her to, you see. She always says no, a course, but one of these fine days, I'm afraid she'll say yes, accidentally, you know."
Heaven forbid, nephew."
"Does that mean you hope not?"
"Indeed, yes."
"Then I say heaven forbid too, 'cause I don't think she'd ever be happy in Mr. Cassilis's great big house, and I shouldn't either."
"Why, of course not."
"You never go about asking people to marry you, do you, Uncle Porges?"
"Well, it could hardly be called a confirmed habit of mine."
"That's one of the things I like about you so. All the time you've been here you haven't asked my Auntie Anthea once, have you?"
"No, my Porges, not yet."
"Oh! But you don't mean that you ever will?"
"Would you be very grieved and angry if I did, some day soon, my Porges?"
"Well, I didn't think you were that kind of a man,"
answered Small Porges, sighing and shaking his head regretfully. "I'm afraid I am, nephew."
"Do you really mean that you want to marry my Auntie Anthea?"
"I do."
"As much as Mr. Cassilis does?"
"A great deal more, I think." Small Porges sighed again, and shook his head very gravely indeed.
"Uncle Porges," said he, "I'm s'prised at you."
"I rather feared you would be, nephew."
"It's all so awful silly, you know. Why do you want to marry her?"
"Because, like a prince in a fairy tale, I'm rather anxious to live happily ever after."
"Oh!"
said Small Porges, turning this over in his mind.
"I never thought of that."
"Marriage is a very important institution, you see, my Porges, especially in this case, because I can't possibly live happily ever after, unless I marry, first. Now can I?"
"No, I s'pose not,"
Small Porges admitted, albeit reluctantly, after he had pondered the matter a while with wrinkled brow.
"But why pick out my Auntie Anthea?"
"Just because she happens to be your Auntie Anthea, of course." Small Porges sighed again.
"Why then, if she's got to be married some day, so she can live happily ever after, well, I suppose you'd better take her, Uncle Porges."
"Thank you, old chap, I mean to."
"I'd rather you took her than Mr. Cassilis, and why, there he is."
"Who?"
"Mr. Cassilis, and he's stopped, and he's twisting his moustache."
Mr. Cassilis, who had been crossing the paddock, had indeed stopped, and was twisting his black moustache, as if he were hesitating between two courses. Finally, he pushed open the gate, and, approaching Bellew, saluted him with that supercilious air which Miss Priscilla always declared she found so trying. "Ah, Mr. Bellew! What might it be this morning? The pitchfork, the scythe, or the plough?" he enquired.
"Neither, sir, this morning it is matrimony."
"Eh? I beg your pardon, matrimony?"
"With a very large M, sir," nodded Bellew.
"Marriage, sir, wedlock. My nephew and I are discussing it in its aspects philosophical, sociological, and—" "That is surely rather a peculiar subject to discuss with a child, Mr. Bellew."
"Meaning my nephew, sir?"
"I mean young George there."
"Precisely, my nephew, Small Porges."
"I refer," said Mr. Cassilis, with slow and crushing emphasis, "to Miss Devine's nephew."
"And mine, Mr. Cassilis, mine by mutual adoption and inclination."
"And I repeat that your choice of subjects is peculiar, to say the least of it."
"But then, mine is rather a peculiar nephew, sir. But surely it was not to discuss nephews, mine or anyone else's, that you are hither come, and our ears do wait upon you. Pray, be seated, sir."
"Thank you, I prefer to stand."
"Strange!" murmured Bellew, shaking his head. "I never stand if I can sit, or sit if I can lie down."
"I should like you to define exactly your position here at Dapplemere, Mr. Bellew."
Bellew's sleepy glance missed nothing of the other's challenging attitude, and his ear nothing of Mr. Cassilis's authoritative tone. Therefore his smile was most engaging as he answered: "My position here, sir, is truly the most enviable in the world. Prudence is an admirable cook, particularly as regards Yorkshire pudding,